Hilchis Gzeilah V'Aveidah Perik Shleishasa. So here the Rambam discusses the dinim of how you meshav the Aveidah. And still now the Rambam is discussing when there's a chiv of Hashavas Aveidah. When there's a chiv of Hashavas Aveidah. Mashiach here the Rambam is talking about the pratim of the chiv of Hashavas Aveidah. So when a person finds an Aveidah that has a chiv Hashavana, so the chiv Hashava means that he has to go and try to look for the person that lost the Aveidah. In other words, he has to go ahead and make an achraza in order that the person that lost the Aveidah should be able to know that an Aveidah was found, and Mela be able to give Simonim and take it. In other words, it's not enough that he has it, and if someone will come and find him, he'll give it back to him. He has to go ahead and make sure that that person should be able to know about it. That's this din. Perish leishasa. Hametzi Aveidah shu chayv lachzira. He found an Aveidah which is assuming that it was lost by a Yid, and also that the Yid wasn't miyayish, and Mimele is chayv lachzira. So the din is chayiv lahachriz Allah. He has to be make achroz about it. Ulahidia v'leimer the misha ovid lemin pleni. Whoever lost this type of an item is yavi v'yitin simon and v'yitil. And afilo hoyse shava pruta be'esa mitzia and v'hozlo. And right now it's already less than a shava pruta. But since when he found it, it was worth a shava pruta. At that point in time, there became a chiyuv of Hashavas Aveidah, and that chiyuv remains chayiv lahachriz Allah. He has to make a achroz about this Aveidah, which is pachis, which was presently pachas mishava pruta, because when he found it, it was a shava pruta. Then ve'ev gdveya hoyse chutz l'Yishalayim shaleh hayam achrizim lepel. The people would come, would be eiler regel. There would be an evan gdela outside Yishalayim, and over there would be the hachrozes would take place about the Avedis. Now, ketzad machriz, what would be the seder of the hachroza? In motzah mois, if he found money, machriz mi sha'avid le'matbeya, someone that lost money. V'chein machriz mi sha'avid le'ksus, a behema, ishtaris. In other words, the type of item that he found is Yaviv, Yitin, Simon, and V'yitel. I, Lechuri, is giving it away, he's saying what he found. The fact that he's saying what he found is not giving away anyone to be able to get the Aveda if he's a Ramai. He has to give Simonim of Hakim. In other words, proper Simonim, accurate Simonim, which are very clearly identifiable, discernible Simonim. And Memela, so therefore Memela, until he gives those Simonim of Hakim, so we don't give it to him. Halacha Gimel. Now, Bal Aveda, V'nosan Simonim She'enim of Hakim, he gave Simonim She'enim of Hakim, Marshall, he said what color it is. So there are many Avedas with that color. Or he says it's tall, it's small. There's things that are very regular in other Avedas also. They could all have those Simonim. It's not a particular simon for that. Is Ein Machzinule. Ad Sheyemer Simonim of Hakim. The Rambam is going to give examples what Simonim of Hakim are. So Bekitzer. So in order for the person to get his Aveda back, he has to come and present Simonim Muvhakim in order to get it back. If he gives Simonim She'enim Muvhakim, he doesn't get it back. Now V'haramai, a person that's an established Ramai, we know he's a Ramai, is Afal Pisha Amar Simonim Muvhakim. Ein Machzinule, he doesn't get it back even with Simonim Muvhakim. Ad Sheyavi Eidim Shishalei. So a Ramai has to come along with Eidim that know that this item, they could recognize this item and say, yeah, this item is this person's. Amru Chachamim, where do we learn out this idea? That says, V'hoya imcha ad drei shachicha. So l'chure, it's drei shachicha sounds like you're being deir shachicha. Like l'chure, it should have said ad shachicha yidrish. Whereas until he goes ahead and looks for it. Over here, drei shachicha sounds like you're being deir shachicha, you're being deirish the person that's looking for it. So he says, ad shetach te'achrav imram yihum lam. That's Chazal learn out that ad drei shachicha means you have to be choker whether this person that's coming to ask for the Aveda is a Ramai, and if he is a Ramai, so then you don't give it back to him, even if he gives Simonim of Hakim, unless he brings Eidim. Now, Bari Sheina, we assume, Misha Aved Le Aveda, Uba V'nosan Simonah, Mazin Neisele, because we don't assume he's a Ramai. But if we know he's a Ramai, so then we insist on Eidim. Masha'engen, if we don't know he's a Ramai, we assume he's not a Ramai, and therefore Mazin Neisele, Elim Ken Husik Ramai. Unless he was a Husik Rabbi, then that's when you insist that he brings Eidim. However, Mishurabu Aramoyim, when there's so many more, when it became so many Ramoyim, so every person is choshev that maybe he's a Ramai. So therefore, it's Kinu Bezdin, She'em Lehavi Eidim She'einat Ramai. You have to bring Eidim She'einat Ramai. You don't have to bring Eidim that this item is yours. There's someone that's an established Ramai has to bring Eidim that this item is yours. Masha'enkin over here, he doesn't have to bring Eidim that the item is his. He has to bring only Eidim that he's not a Ramai. Havi Edom Sheinat Ramai Vatul. Obviously, if he'll bring Edom that the item is his, even if he doesn't have Edom that he's not a Ramai, so Afilu Naniach that he is a Ramai, but Lepel he has Edom that the item is his, so Mela it's his. Halacha Hey. Now we learned that in order to get back an Aveda, you have to give a Siman Muvik. If you give a Siman She'enim Muvik, that's not enough to get back an Aveda. Now the Rambam says, Hasimonim HaMuvhakim, Seimchen Aleim, V'donim Alpiyim, B'chol Mokim D'Teira. No, the Simonim HaMuvhakim is not something which only is Negea to an Aveda. It's Negea, Donim Alpiyim, B'chol Mokim D'Teira. In other words, if you want to be Mater and Isha L'Baila, based on the fact that the person died, so if you have a Siman on the person, so that would also, if it would be a Siman Muvik, or Siman Muvik on the person, that would be enough to be Mater Isha L'Baila. So that's Seimchen Aleim, V'donim Alpiyim, B'chol Mokim D'Teira. Then the Ram continues, V'hamida, Ehamishkal, Ehaminyan, Mekemo Aveda, Simonim Muvhakimein. So the pashtus, the Lashon HaRam sounds like it's the same. In other words, he starts off Simonim Muvhakim, Seimchen Aleim Din Teira, and then the Ram Firzuis, that Hamida, Ehamishkal is a Simon Muvik, but it's Muvur in the Mefarshim, that Be'emes, it's not the pashtus HaLashon of the Rambam, but in the beginning he says, HaSimonim HaMuvhakim. Whereas there's Simonim HaMuvhakim al derech, like Nekev Yesh B'Tzad Eis Pleini, which is Siman Muvik, and there's a very specific Siman, which is more specific than Midah Imishkol, because other things could have that same Midah. So those Simonim Muvhakim are same Kman Aleim B'chol Mokim D'Teira. Now, B'Hamida, Ehamishkol, Ehaminyan, if a person says how many coins there were, or what's the weight, or what's the size, and became Aveda, they're also called Simonim Muvhakim Legabi Aveda. This is Legabe Aveda, they're called up Simonim Muvhakim, which is only Midrabanon, and you Machzor Aveda with these Simonim. Masha'enken has Simonim HaMuvhakim, which the Ram doesn't specify what they are, so Simon HaMuvik al derech, Nekev Yesh B'Tzad Eis Pleini, so that's Seimchen Aleim, V'donim Alpiyim B'chol Mokim. I'm saying the Lashon HaRambam sounds like we're saying the same thing, but Lepel, that's it, because Mishnah teaches that Nachmal, that Simonim HaMuvhakim, which means Mamish Muvik, not what he's going to mention right now, is Seimchen Aleim V'donim Alpiyim B'chol Mokim Din Teira. B'hamida, Hamishkol, Ehaminyan, and became Aveda, they have a din of Simonim Muvhakim. They're considered Simonim Muvhakim, Legabi being Ma'azur Aveda. Halacha Vov. Bo Shnayim, Zen Nosen Simoni Aveda, V'Zen Nosen Simoni Aveda. Kimesh Nosen Acher, they're both giving the same Simonim, the same Madrega and Simonim. So the din is Leitin, Leila Zev, Leila Zeh. You don't know who it belongs to. Elatia Munachas, Achi Yoidah Echad L'Chaveda. We don't know, they're both lying. But L'Chura, one of them is lying. So either one of them will be made to the other person that it's really his. Hey, Yasu be named Shara, or they'll make up Shara. Say, listen, I have a simon, you have a simon, so we'll make up Shara, and we'll get each one half. Now, not even though Lepel, in our minds, only one of them is saying the truth, but Lepel, since they agreed amongst each other to make up Shara, so maybe you give it to them. Nanosna echadus hasimonim, v'asheni hevi edom. He has edom, which have a tvia sign that this item is his. So the din is yitin lebal ha'edom. Edom are stronger than simonim. Zen nosim simonim, v'zen nosim simonim. Ve'edachot. One of them has simonim, the other one has sai simonim and edachot. So the din is harei ha'edachot k'misha eini v'yanech. So the kudah from the din is that you give back with simonim. It has to be a simon muvik. What's called a simon muvik? The guy be giving back an aveda, mishkol, minyan, mekemo aveda, and mida. These are all simonim muvhakim. The guy be giving back an aveda. If you have two people that give the same madrega of simonim, they give the same madrega of simonim, so you can't give it back to either of them unless they come to some type of an agreement. Either one is made to the other, or they make up shara between them. That's din number one. And then there's another din that Eidim are stronger than Simonim. If you have Eidim that have Tviyas Ayin, that this is his, even though this person has Simonim, we give it to the Baal HaEidim. Now, if one person has Simonim plus an Eidachot against the other person that has a Simonim, so the Eidachot is commando lesser. Halacha Zayin. Matzah simla ukietzeba. He found a simla, a garment. V'zeh hevi edi ariga shergule. He recognizes that this garment was woven for this person. He can't see, there's a certain tefillah sign that he sees that this garment was woven for this person. Aber v'zeh hevi edim shenaflu mimenu. The other person has edim that this garment fell from him. Is yitnul edim and nefillah. The edim aren't a stira. The garment was woven for this and this person. But on the other person, on the other hand, maybe he sold it and Lepel it ended up falling from the other person. So Lepel, since there's Eidin Nefilah, so the last person that we know had it was this person that the Eidim say it fell from him, so it goes to him. Now zem mit nosen midas orka, v'zem nosen midas rochba. So the din is yitain misha nosan midas orka. Now orka, they used to have the clothes was like a big piece of cloth, and they would wrap themselves with the cloth. So the length of the cloth would go around them. In other words, there would be a long piece of cloth, and the width of the cloth was the height of the person. So the person, as you take a look and you could assess how big the rochba is, because there's basically you could see the height of how much the clothes is taking up in him. But how many times it's wrapped around, you don't really see, because you don't know how many times it's wrapped around, and that would determine how long the piece of cloth is. So again, Zen Nosan Midas Arka, he gave the length of the cloth, the Zen Nosan Midas Rochba, and the other one gave the width of the cloth, is eaten Lamisha Nosan Midas Arka, so you should give it to the person that gave the length of the cloth. But basically, the person who gives the length of the cloth, he's like saying something which you wouldn't know how many times it's wrapped around. You see the person covered with it, so you can see pretty much the height of the person or the height of the item on the person. That's the midas rachba, that's the width of the item. Masha'inkin, the length of the item, you have to know how many times it's wrapped around it. You don't really know. So Mamela, to know that needs to be more of a simon of bailus, of the bailim rather, than knowing the midas rachba. Now, Zeh nosen midas arka v'rachba. V'zeh kivin mishgilaser, he said, side the midas arka, side the midas rachba. But the other one said the weight of the item is yit l'misha kivin mishkala, because the arka and rachba is also something which you could assess, you could judge, even though you don't know it exactly. Masha'inkin, to know the weight is something which is more difficult to know. Zen nasan midas arka v'rachba. Zen nasan midas ha'imri shebei. The one that he says the size of like the hem that's on the item is giving the imrius or those pieces of thread that hang down from the item. That's the end of the shesi. Is yitn l'mishanas and midas arka v'rachba, because again the midas imrius is something which you could either see or you could assess, and it's easier to know than to know midas arka v'rachba. In the taich of the word imrius, some taich that imrius is like the hem. Some people say that it's like a tzura in Pirush HaMishnayos. Seems to say that it's a tzura on the beged. The imrius is like a tzura on the beged. I'm not really sure. L'chura, if it's a tzura on the beged, so l'chura it should be seen. So how could that be a simon? I'm not really sure. Halacha ches. Barishena kol mishamotza Aveidah. So the seder was hayamachriz leishir regol. He would be machriz on it 3 regolim. Let's say it's in the Beis Hamikdash. They would be oila l'regol 3 times a year. So Mela, by all shleishir regolim, after he found the Aveidah, he would be machriz that he found this Aveidah on this Evan Yerushalayim, this Evan Govea outside Yerushalayim. Over there was the place. There was the achraza. Now regel rishon, when he would be machriz the first regel, a merishon. He said, "This is the first time I'm being machriz. This is the first yomtiv." Sheni, he would say sheni, and shlishi machriz stam kadei sheli yischalef l'sheni b'shlishi. Because you want everyone, when they hear, they should know that this is being already the second time. Now he's going to say shlishi. There's a concern that when the person hears maybe from far the word shlishi, it might sound like sheni. So Memela, they instituted that he shouldn't say anything. So maybe they'll know that the rule was, if you're saying one, it's Rishon, it's Rishon. If it's Sheni, it's Sheni. If you don't say anything, it's Shlishi. Now what's the ufto of them knowing which regel Dachraz is? Because a person hears that they're being machriz, so if he hears that it's the regel Rishon or regel Sheni, so he thinks to himself, all right, so I'll see the regel Shlishi, I'll worry about it. Mashenka, when he hears that it's already the regel Shlishi, or he hears they're not announcing which regel, so therefore he realizes it's the regel shlishi, so he's going to make sure, he's going to make sure to think that I lose such an item, and he's going to go home and be baidik whether he actually lost such an item, and he'll immediately come back to check whether he lost the item. After the last regel, b'shivas yom for 7 days, machris pam revius. During after the third regel, for 7 days he's machris a 4th time. There was once the first regel, the second regel, third regel, and now after the regel, a 4th time. What's the purpose? He should check his items and see whether he lost something. And so now he'll find this person being machris in the seventh day after the third regal of his regal. His third regal. Depends when he found it. If he found it, let's say, before Pesach, so Pesach is the first, and Sukkot is the third. If he found it before Sukkot, so it'll come out that Shavuos is the third. Yeah. That's this din. So you have to understand that tzir over here is a person finding an Aveda, and then he's being machers it beregel, and he machers 3 regolim, and then he spends another whole week after the regel in order to be machers on this Aveda, which could be, like he said, a Pachs Mishava Pruta. In order for this person to go home, and assuming that he's going to go home within 3 days, and he's going to come back and go find this Aveda, it's hard to have this tzir in our way of life, to have the tzir of these Avedas. The Gemara says, even though not everyone really lived within 3 days of Yerushalayim, so maybe you're only giving an opportunity for people to go home for 3 days and come back for 3 days. Also, you have to understand, he's been machers already 3 regalim, so we're saying, no, after you machers already the third regal, give an opportunity to the person that lost it. Maybe after the first regal he wasn't really looking because he knew he'll be able to hear it another time. Look, everyone is thinking to themselves that they're going to hear this achrazah and others. Everybody's by the achrazahs. Halacha tes. Mi shechar bis hamikdash iskinu shemachrizim bebati knesiyos ubat medrashos. There was no longer bis hamikdash. There was no longer people coming to Yerushalayim. So mainly you wanted to be in a makom where people gather. So the achrazah was a bis hakneses bis hamedrash. Now misharabu ha'anosim and va'amru ha'metzias shel melech. People who are anosim, the melech would be able to confiscate the metzias. So people would come to the melech and they would tell the melech that there's metzias. And Mamela, the Melech would tell this person to notify who's the Metzias, and Mamela, he would get like a certain percentage. So there would be the Rabu Hanosim v'Amra Metzias Shel Melechi, and they would go and notify the Melech. So if someone would announce that he has a Metzias, so then all of a sudden he'll have someone by his door soon wanting to confiscate this Metzia. Is Iskinu Shemidin L'Shchenev L'Miyudoi V'Dayev. He shouldn't go make any major announcements. Certainly there's no place outside Yerushalayim to make the announcement, even in the Beis HaKnesses. Beis HaMedrash, he should just notify his friends and his neighbors, and if anyone knows someone that actually lost this item, so they should tell him, and that person will come and he'll give simon. Now here is a hidia v'lei bo abaylo. Lepel, he made this achrazah. So the erste zach is a person has a chiyuv to go try to notify the person that lost the Aveda that he should know about it. So the Seder was, original Seder was that there would be the Evan Gaveya outside Yerushalayim. That would be the achrazah. He would be machris 3 regalim plus another 7 days after the regal shlishi. Now lepel hichra is a idea v'lei bo abaylo. So the din is the mitzvah is still not his. Lepel it's a mitzvah that doesn't belong to him. It's tia mitzvah munachas etzlei ad sheyavi elio. Ubechol zman she'aveda etzlei, as long as the aveda is still by him, im nigna ve'yov the chay b'achriyusa, because he has a din of Hashem Yisachar. V'im not supporter she'Hashem aveda k'Hashem Yisacharu. Why is he Hashem Yisachar? B'pnei shu'esik b'mitzvah. V'nifter mikam a mitzvah sasei kol zman shu'esik b'shmirasa. Gemara says that he's also nifter from giving a pruta la'ani. So Memela, so it comes out that he's having a schar for the fact that he's being Shema the Aveda. But I'll call upon Shema Aveda as a din of Hashem Yisachar. So as long as the Aveda is still in this possession, he is Chai Bachrayas of Gneva Aveda like every Shema Yisachar. Halacha Yudala v'tzorech levaker so Aveda ulebotka kedei sheli posid v'tevid meila. Because he has achrayus on this Aveda, not only that it shouldn't get lost, but it shouldn't rot. Something shouldn't happen. In other words, he has to go and inspect the Aveda and check to make sure that the Aveda doesn't disintegrate. Shenema v'ashivesile. In other words, re'eh heich tishivenolei. Not only is he mechuyev to return the Aveda to the original owner, to find the owner, but if he doesn't find the owner, he has to make sure that this Aveda remains intact and nothing happens to it. Ketzad, Mosek sus shel tzemer, and a piece of clothes of wool, if it just lies there so it could get ruined, is menara achas l'sheshiyim. He has to shake it out every 30 days. V'lei nara b'makal, he shouldn't shake it with a stick because that could ruin it. And also v'lei b'shnei b'nei adam, 2 people shouldn't pull because then you'll maybe stretch it. But you have to shake it out every 30 days. And v'shoitcha al gabi mito l'tzorcha b'vad, you can spread it out on a bed l'tzorcha for this purpose of spreading it out, that it should air out. Avalei l'tzorcha l'tzorchei. In other words, let's say you want it should spread out in order for the tzorech of the beged. But the Vaila, you'll also have a benefit. It'll be nice, maybe people are coming, and Mamela, you'll have a benefit from it. So that's no, Avalei l'tzorcha l'tzorchei. There's damno l'yorchim, if there's orchim, and you're not really spreading it out for the orchim. but lepel, there's orchim there, and there's orchim there, there's always a chash, maybe one of them will steal it, is leish tachana b'fneim. Don't spread out this beged that you have to spread out for the tzerich of the beged in front of the orchim, vafilu l'tzarcha, even if the purpose is only for the beged. Whereas you have no interest in this beged being spread out in front of the orchim. But still, don't spread it out in front of the orchim, shematigonav. So b'kitzur, you have to take care of the beged, make sure that it doesn't, that it remains intact. And there's special ways of how you have to make sure in a way that it shouldn't get ruined. And also, you shouldn't do it, something with it which would be l'tzarchai. Also, you should do only l'tzarcha. And you also shouldn't spread it out when there's orchim, even if you're spreading it out l'tzarcha, because there's a chash that through the orchim it might be nignav. Now, matzah kliyetz, you found a keli made out of wood, is mishtamish bem kedei shelo yirakfu. So in other words, a keli of wood, if it's not used, it gets it rots. So you have to use it, and it's brought down. You have to use it only a little bit amount. You shouldn't use it a lot because then it'll get ruined. You should use it just a little bit in order that it shouldn't rot. Now, klei necheshes, made out of copper, is mishtamish ben becham. You should use it with hot water. Also, vices, it's important for it to be used. Avalei ayidei or you shouldn't use it with fire. Because that is going to rub it down. In other words, it's going to become, it's going to depreciate in value. Now, klei kesef, you have a silver keli, vice is also no good for it not to be used. Is mishtamish ben betzeinen. It should be used betzeinen. Avalei bechamen, because chamen is no good for it. It causes it to become black. So these are things that are important l'tzarich. It's not just you're allowed to use it. You're not allowed to use someone's keli. You're only allowed to use it if, in order to serve the keli. So you're allowed to use the klietz in order shelo yirakfu. Or kli necheshes you could use, but not with fire, with hot, something hot. Kli kesef you could use something cold. You should use, not only you could, you should, but not with something hot. Now matzah magrefes v'kardumes, also like pitchforks and types of shovels or axes, is yishtamish ben barach. You should use it on something soft. Vice it's also important for it to be used, but it shouldn't be used on something hard because it could break. But rather, it should be used on something soft. Avalei b'kosher, because you're going to make it less in value. Now, matzah kli zov ukli schuches uksushel pishton. You found kalim of gold or glass or kli pishton flax, linen is arezel yigavem achi yavelio because they don't need to be used in order for them to be preserved. Gold kalim, glass kalim, uksushel pishton don't need to be used. Nothing has to be done to them in order for them to be preserved. So that's this din. The din is when a person finds an Aveidah, so the din is, first of all, he has to try to return it. If he doesn't return it, he's responsible for it. He's responsible for it until it gets back to its original owner, and he has to make sure that the Aveidah remains it remains intact. It doesn't get ruined. So you have to do whatever is involved in making sure that it doesn't get ruined. But on the other end, you shouldn't in any way. You shouldn't in any way do something which could hurt it, which could cause it to get stolen or to get it to become less in value. Then the Rambam continues, if a person was giving you a pikadon, and lepel the bail of holochem din sayam, so you have an item of his in your possession, so you have to make sure that that item remains intact. That item remains intact. Now this din b'pasha din Hashavas Aveidah. So in other words, if the Baal is here, so let him come and take care of the Bikodin, make sure the Bikodin doesn't get lost. But if the Baal was Holchum din Hayam, so then it's your Achrayas. Now the question is, why did the Baal go to din Hayam? He gave you a Bikodin, and he went to the din Hayam. Did you know he's going to the din Hayam? If he gave you a Bikodin, the pastors he's going to be here, and now all of a sudden he went to the din Hayam. So l'chor it's like an Aveidah Midas. So it would always be an Aveidah Midas with less. You knew he was going to Medina Sayyam, or circumstances all of a sudden made it that he should go to Medina Sayyam. You have to know the exact tzir. That if a person, L'moshel, gives you an Aveidah, assuming that you're taking an Aveidah for a few days, or whatever, now all of a sudden, or even not for a few days, but assuming that that person is here, and now all of a sudden you hear that that person went to Medina Sayyam, and all of a sudden you're responsible to take care of this pikadon. The question is, are you actually responsible? I mean, that would maybe go into the gather of Aveidah Midas. You have to be, that's sort of bir. Halacha Yud Gimel. Matzah Svarim, he finds a sefer, which a sefer means something which is like our sefer Teres and Megillas, which are rolled. Is Keireh Bem Achaz L'Shei Shinim. You read it every 30 days. because you want to air it out. You don't want it to remain closed. He doesn't know how to read it. Is goylul on kol shleishim yom. Every 30 days you roll it in order for it to be aired out. You shouldn't learn in the sefer lechatchila, whereas you could read the sefer if you know the sefer, but if you're learning the sefer lechatchila, so you're going to be spending a lot of time on each part of the sefer, and that's going to be more wear and tear. Don't read the parsha and read it over again. You just read the parsha once. And also, don't read the parsha and say over the targum. This is all pshat because you're going to be spending more time on it than necessary. You're allowed to read it. You're allowed to read it because you have to roll it anyways. So while you're rolling it, you're allowed to read it. But if you're going to spend a lot of time on reading it, in other words, you're going to roll it and you're going to keep it open to one place for a longer time because you're learning this item. Or you're going over and you're saying the targum of this item, or you're saying over the item twice, so it comes out you're spending more time on the item than the item needs, so mainly you're like ruining the item. And also, when you open the sefer, you shouldn't open it more than 3 columns, because it shouldn't fall off. And also, because 2 people will be reading the same sefer in 2 separate inyanim, because Shema Yimshir Zev, Yivla Sefer. Each one is going to pull the sefer towards himself. Memela, the sefer will get ruined. But 2 people could read this together, the sefer, in the same inyan. 3 people to read the sefer together, even one inyan is not allowed. 2 people is allowed. So Bekitzer, you have to open the sefer. You have to make sure to roll the sefer. You should roll the sefer. Either you read the sefer once, and that's how you roll it, or you roll it without reading it. But if you're going to read it and learn the sefer for the first time, or you're going to be reading the sefer and rereading the sefer, or you're going to be reading the sefer with targum, so then you'll be spending too much time, and that's going to be ruining the sefer. Also, you shouldn't open the sefer more than 3 dafim. Also, 2 people shouldn't be reading the sefer, one in one inyan and one in the other inyan, because they might pull to each other. And 3 people shouldn't be reading the sefer, even if it's one inyan. Halacha Yudalit. Matzat tefillin, a person found tefillin, so sham demeim umanichan olav. You don't have to really hold those tefillin and return those tefillin to the original owners, because the owner would rather be the taiva of the owner to go ahead and say, you keep the tefillin, because vices people are more weren't makbid on which tefillin they had. As long as there was tefillin, there was not a problem. So memela, so all you do is assess how much this tefillin is worth, and you start using the tefillin, and lepel later on, if you find the buyer, the person that owns the tefillin, so then you just give him the money if he gives a simon on those tefillin. Matzah tefillin sham demei monichno of why shedavar motzi hu biyadakel. It's something which is motzi, and ve'in asurin alul mitzvasim bilvad. So therefore, people aren't makbid. So it's like when you get a simla, we say you have to keep the simla. As you have a simla shel semer, you have to keep the simmer, and you have to go keep shaking out the simla. You can't go ahead and sell the simla. Mashenkim, when you get tefillin, was saying that tefillin, since people only need it for the mitzvah, so they're not makbid. If you go ahead and sell it, even though now they don't longer have the tefillin, so they'll buy another pair of tefillin. People aren't makbid as long as you'll give them the money for the tefillin. You have to understand the tzir advarim. I mean, in today's world is fakert. I mean, a piece of clothes, you can find another piece of clothes. Mashaik and tefillin is something which people are very particular about, who's the sefer and how it was written. So people don't want to just go ahead and buy a pair of tefillin. But over here, the Vice says the seder was that you just assessed how much the tefillin was worth, and he says, "Adover motzu biyad hakel ve'in asurin alul mitzvasim bilvad." So a person is certainly not makbid for you to use the tefillin, and he'll get the money back for the tefillin, as opposed to a sefer, where a sefer doesn't say a sefer go ahead and sell it. The sefer says you should watch and you should be rolling it every month. Halacha tezvav matzu davar sheyesh beiruchaim. Until we spoke about, you find an item that's an inanimate item, doesn't have to eat. The question is only how to make sure to preserve it. Now we're talking about you find an item which has to eat. Matzu davar sheyesh beiruchaim sharitzorchu la'achile has to eat. The question is how do you deal with an item that you find that has to be fed? Is imhoyed davar she'osav oichel is something which could produce and it also eats. Kigein para, v'chamer, a cow or a donkey. Is metapel bem shnei masur chedesh me'em hamitziyah, so you deal with them for 12 months. Umaskiron, so you rent them out, and v'lekeach schar, and you get paid for renting them out, and then you feed them with the money that you got for the rent. If lepel they were rented out for more than they needed to eat, is Hayasel Bailam. So that extra belongs to the Bailam. You don't have to go ahead and start renting out enough to get as much money as you can. L'chura, you only rent it out as much as is necessary in order to feed it. If you want to rent it out more, Beseder. But Lepel, if you only want to rent it out, if renting it out for a few months is already enough to feed it for a whole year, so in Pashtus, L'chura, you don't have to rent it out a whole year. You rent it out for as much as you need, and you use that money in order to feed it. V'chein atar negolim, chickens, is mecher bitzeyem umachilim kol shnei masor chedesh. You go ahead and you sell the eggs, and you use that money to feed it for 12 months. Now, mikan ve'elech, once it was already 12 months past, and you didn't find the original owner, so now the din is sham dmei malov. You assess the value of the item, of the chamer, of the para, or of the tarnagel, v'harein shaloi v'shalabaylim b'shutfis, and they become both of yours b'shutfis. Kidin kol hasham behem mechaverin. Now the seder is that l'mashal, if you, let's say a person has sheep, and he's looking for someone to deal with the sheep, to be a shepherd for the sheep. So he goes to someone, he says like this, my sheep, I have sheep, and they're worth kach v'kach money. You go ahead and take this sheep, and you deal with them, and you become the shepherd for them. And eventually, when we're going to sell the sheep, or whatever, we're going to have profit from the sheep. Let's say the sheep will have other sheep. So Memela, so we're going to now, the original amount of money that it was worth originally is mine. And the profit that we're going to share. So basically, we become shutfim. We become shutfim in this product. It's just that half of it belongs to you, but you owe me the money for it. And the other half was mine originally. You know, originally the whole thing was mine. Now half of it is mine, half of it is yours. And you owe me money for that half. So the same thing over here. Over here, this item belongs to the Bailam. So now this person becomes like a 50% partner in this item. He's not paying for it because Lepeil, he doesn't know who the Bailam are. But at this point in time, he's becoming a 50% partner in the item. And eventually, when the original owner will come back, so then you'll be able to share 50-50. And if he doesn't come back, so Mela, the violet's by him, the money is by him. That's what he's saying. Sham demeim alav, takes the value of it and he puts it on him. Vareim shalei v'shalabayim b'shutfus. Kidin kol hasham behem mechaver. And then he could go ahead and sell it. And now the money that this item was worth, now he has that money. And that money belongs to the original Bible. As we'll soon see Bahemshim, that when a person finds an item and he goes and sells it, so that money really belongs to the original item. Now what does he do with that money? That's what we'll learn Bahemshim. Halacha tezayin. Motza agolim usayochim shorei. He finds agolim is a calf and sayochim is a donkey, a young donkey. Shorei means that they pasture in the pasture and he doesn't really have to feed them. So Memela, since he doesn't have to feed them, is metapel b'em shleish chadashim. So he handles them for 3 months as the Gzeilah V'Aveidah. V'shal but if something which doesn't really have pasture, he has to go and feed it. So then a shleishim yem, he has to only deal with it for 30 days. In other words, al Gzeilah V'Aveidah, before he goes ahead and transforms it into money, so he deals with it and tries to find the owner, so to speak, for 30 days. Or so when we're dealing with a golem sayochim shorei, he tries to find the owner for 3 months. And Masha'inkin, if we're dealing with Shalbriya, which means he has to feed it. And then when he feeds it, so later on when he finds the owner, he's going to have to ask to be reimbursed for that money. So Memele, he's only mechuyev to deal with it for 30 days. Na'avzim v'tarnagelim g'dolim, there's large roosters or large geese, is metapel b'em shleishim yem, also 30 days. However, motza k'tanim, or v'chol davar shetipule meruba mischari, and it's very hard to handle with it, and he's not going to really gain, there's not going to be so much gain of money, the work that he's going to have to be involved in it, is metapel b'em shleishi yom. So again, so if a person finds, l'mashal, small geese, or small roosters, and lepeil, so for him to start handling with these items would involve a lot of work, and there's really not that much gain at this point in time. So Memela is meichrim bebezin, so you can't ve'elech meichrim bebezin, and v'chein perish is chilo laharkev yetzirem is meichrim bebezin. He goes ahead and sells it bebezin. So l'churim maskor is if you have something, you find something like a parah, chamer, tarnagelim, which could produce work, does work. So you go ahead for 12 months, and you're still trying to return the item. You're still trying to return the item, and for 12 months you rent it out in order to get the money in order to feed it. So it's fed with the money that you rented out. If you have extra money, so that money all belongs to the original buyer. So now it's after 12 months. So now you can become a shutif in that item. You assess how much is this item worth, how much is this item worth, and now you become like a shutif in that item, and you owe the original owners half of the value of this item, because you became a shutif in this item with the original owner. And now this item is going to go ahead and produce whatever it's going to produce, and you're going to be a shutif with that original owner in this item. Now the mice is the owner is not here. The owner is not here, and you're becoming a shutif with him in this item. So the pashtus, you could go ahead and sell the item. But the vart is you could become a shutif in the item. The item is something which produces. The item which is something that produces. And the mele, you could become a shutif with this owner in this item. I'm not sure if you have to remain a shutif. Because the lepel, this item is going to produce, and the lepel, you don't have the owner. So a whole time it's going to be half of the of what it's going to be, profit is going to be yours, and the other half is going to be the original owners, whenever he's going to come and claim it. What happens if he never comes and claims it? So a whole time, these items are really his. These items are really his. And then you have to figure out, what do you do when you have items of someone else in your possession that are really his, which we're going to learn b'hamshich. I'll call upon him, nachamon. You have a person, you found a par or a chamer, so for 12 months you feed the par and the chamer, you get the money for feeding it from renting the par or chamer. After you finish with those 12 months, and now you become a shutif in that par and the chamer, and that whatever profits are going to happen is going to be 50-50 with you and the original owner, and address that you're going to owe the original owner half of that money. Half of the money you're going to own to the original owner. That's this din if you found something that produces. Now if you find something that doesn't produce, for example, you find a calf, young calves, or young donkeys, so it depends. If there's a lot involved in taking care of it, the marshal, you have to feed them, so then you only have to be metapel for 1 month, and then you go ahead and sell it. You go and sell it after a month, as we'll soon see. Masha'inkin, if there's not so involved, so much work, so then you could go and then you have to be metapel with it for 3 months. That's what does it mean, more work and less work? And if there's pasture, that it's sugar's pasture, and you don't have to really feed it, so then you hold on to it for 3 months before you sell it. Masha'in came if there's no pasture, so you have to feed it, so you hold on to it for a month and then you sell it. That's when we're dealing with things that are large. In other words, they're not that much work. It's work, but it's not that much work. If we're dealing with something very young, matzah you're finding very small chickens, small geese, so mele involves a lot of work, so then you only have to hold on to it 3 days, and after 3 days you go sell it. That's this din. You only take care of it for 3 days. Mikan ve'elech is meichrim bebezdin. You go ahead and sell it in bezdin. And v'chein perish is chilul ark. If you have perish, you find perish that are beginning to rot. If you're going to hang around, if you're going to leave it there, so then it's going to completely rot. So you have to go and sell it as soon as possible. Is also meichrim bebezdin. You go ahead and sell these perish bebezdin. So b'kitzur, we have over here mitzias that you found, and that you sold it bebezdin. You sold it. Now that mitzvah was transformed into money. That mitzvah was transformed into money. And that was all these cases, the cases of all the things that don't work. The agolim, the sayochim, whether after 3 months you sell it, or after 1 month you sell it, or after 3 days you sell it, you're selling this item. So now, halacha yud zayin, ma yaseh b'dam. What should you do with the money? You must know the meitzi. You should, the person that found it, he should have this money. Now, v'yeshli rishus l'ishtamish b'hem. Now he has the permission to use this money. He has permission to use this money. In other words, you go ahead and sell the item, and now he has the money, and he could go ahead and use this money. Lefichach im nerzo. Since the din is that he's allowed to use the money, so if the pale an oinus happened to the money, can shetor from guys yitov b'yom an oinus happened, so the din is chayav l'shalom. Aval pi shalei nishtamish b'hem. Shekiven sheyeshli rishus l'ishtamish b'hem marin etzik kishayla. So just like if someone's a shoyl on something, so he's chayiv b'einsim. If a person's a levi, he's certainly chayiv b'einsim. So al derech zeh, over here, since he has a right to use this money, even though he never used the money, but since he has a right to use the money, so in Mele, he's chayiv b'einsim. So again, so these items you go ahead and sell, and the money he could use, but since he could use the money, so he becomes responsible for the money. That money has to be returned to the original item, but the viola he could use to the original owners, to the one that really owned the original mitzvah. Masha'in came and he doesn't find them, so the viola he could use the money. But medvar mamurim that you're allowed to use the money of an aveda b'dmeo aveda. Whereas if you have an item that you sold and you got money for that item, then you could go ahead and use that money. V'nitpol b'hem. In other words, you had an Aveidah, it was an Aveidah that you found, and then you were metapel with this Aveidah, and then you sold the item, and you have the money, so then you're allowed to use the money. Avil Moyes Aveidah, if you find Moyes Aveidah, which is Moyes Aveidah that you're not allowed to use, is Leish Tamish B'hem. And since you're not allowed to be Mishtamish B'hem, so Lepel, if they were lost, is Potter, Shari Shem Esachik, Mesha B'yarnu. A Shemer Aveidah is a Shemer Esachik, he's not a Shoyl, so Mamela, he's only Chayev for Gneva Aveidah, he's not Chayev for Oinus. That's it. So B'kitzur, the din is that you go ahead and sell the item, and the money you could use. And the Pashas, we go back to Halacha Tezvav, so he became a shutiv in this item. So what Pshat becomes a shutiv in the item? So let's say he becomes a shutiv in this parah. And now this parah was moilet, or this parah did something, produced money. So half of the money is the person that found the parah, and half of the money belongs to the original Bala parah. Now the Pashta, since just like the half of the money, just like if you go ahead and sell the time Gelim, or whatever you sell, so that money you're allowed to use. So Alderach's over here. You're allowed to use that money. In other words, the money, you have a part. And that part you were metapel for 12 months. Now you become a shutiv in this part. So you become a shutiv in the part. So anything the part produces a vlad, half of that vlad is yours, half of the vlad is the original owner's. Now, Lepel, since it's the original owner's, but you can go ahead and sell the vlad, half of that money is yours, and half of that money is the original owner's. Now, what do you do with that money? So just like if you sell, like we're learning now, if you sell it, you could use that money. So you could use that money, and that money belongs to the original owner. If that original owner will come, so then you'll have to give him back that money. You have to give him back that money, and you'll be chai ba'insan on that money. You'll be chai ba'insan on the money. In other words, you'll be chai to pay for half of this parah, and then you'll have to be chai also to pay for half of the produce of the parah, which really belonged to the original owners, but he's not here. So maybe you went ahead and sell it. That's l'chura al derech haposhut. What happens? Halacha yutes kol esna yom shemetapel ba'aveidah kedim shim kerena bebezin is im hechila mishalei. Like we said before, you found certain items that you have to feed, and you feed them for a month. So what do? So im hechila mishalei is neto min habaylim. So when the baylim come along and take their item, so then you could take min habaylim. And l'chura also when you sell the item, and now you're taking the money, so l'chura you could take the money from that sale. Or since the baylim owe you the money, so now this money, so this item produced now money. So now from that money, which is the baylim's money, you could go ahead and pay yourself for the money that you laid out in order to feed him. Halacha, so tikkun elam b'chlal, there's a din of tikkun elam that b'chlal you don't swear for an aveda. So over here also, for the fact, normally you would say you're a nishba v'netel. Because you're tiny, you took money, and maybe he owes you money. But the din is no, over here, tikkun elam, the Ram says, Yiroli, that the moitzi aveda, which fed this item, and he's claiming that this is what it cost him, he doesn't have to swear in order to get his money back. Halacha chof. Ha-moitzi mitzia, a person that finds a mitzia, b'chlal, is lei shavim tikkun elam. So even though if the bala mitzia comes along, and he tines, that you definitely found more than you're giving me, and he's telling, no, I didn't find more. So the din is, and even though me'ikr the din, he would be chayiv to pay, maybe I made him a mixas, he would be chayiv to swear, but nevertheless, tikkun elam, there was a din d'Rabbanan that he doesn't have to swear, because people won't want to pick up mitzias. Ha-moitzi mitzia li-yishavim tikkun elam, she'ima ta'ema yishava, if the din is going to be that he has to swear, is yaniach ha-mitzia v'yelech le-kadei shel yishava, afilu matzah kiss, v'toan bala mitzia sheshnei kisim kshurim hoya, and v'yavshe she'imtzu echad elim nimtza hasheni ha-kosherim, so you definitely found two, and he's telling you, no, I only found one. So the din is hareza yishava, he doesn't have to swear. So that's the takonis elam. Knows the pashtus who comes out that be'etzim he should swear al tzadin of a meideh b'miktzas, because he's telling a tainas bari, you definitely found two, and he's saying no, I only found one. But nevertheless, the din is that he doesn't swear b'miktzas tikkun elam. You have to have the tzir that he's telling he found one. And knows if he already gave the one, so the churi doesn't have a din of a meideh b'miktzas, because then he has a din of halach. Because if a person comes along and says, I found a mitzvah, and he gives the person back the mitzvah. And now this person is saying, no, but I lost two. So kitzur, I already got one, so now I'm only talking about the one. And if I'm only talking about the one, so l'chur it's not a din of Hashavas Aveidah, it's not a din of Aveidah b'miktzas, it's a din of Halach. So you have to have a tzir. There's a whole dion in the Rishenim and the Achreinim. What's exactly the tzir of Ameitzi Mitzir Leishavim the Tikkun Elam on the Deiraisa level? The Be'etzem he should swear Shavuos Aveidah b'miktzas. So it's talking about in a case that he didn't actually give the item back. He's being moided that he found an item and that he owes that item. The item is maybe not be'en, but on the other hand, he only owes one item and not two items. And this person is telling, no, you owe two items. So then me'ikr the dinner would be a din of a meidah b'miktzas, and he's telling he owes them only miktzas, and he's saying, no, you owe me more. So the din is hameitzi mitzia le'yishavim b'mnei tikkun elu.